Okay, after going through this description, like of the how do we measure, like what type of data we get in the reflectivity measurement at a very short time scale. So let's go back to our this two-step model. So our equations was CE del T by dt equal to, so we were writing d by dx, like in 1D we were writing it like that, k d by dx of t. Instead of writing this, we would write now gradient to include all three directions. Gradient of te minus g t minus tl, and for the lattice part we would get cl dtl by dt equal to gte minus tl. Okay, so we what we could do is we could simplify these two equation into one equation. So if we take this g into denominator, so cl by g del tl by del t equal to t minus tl. So t we could simply write, so cl over g del t over del t plus tl. So t equal to this. So we could substitute this t into this equation, the top equation. So here, here, and here. So we once we substitute this equation, so what we would get is, so we would get in terms of now everything in terms of TL. So this is TL. So gradient square of TL plus CL over G del by del T of gradient square of TL equal to CL plus CE divided by K del TL over del T plus CL CE by kg del 2 TL over del T2. So from this equation, actually, we could draw some conclusions. So we could see, so let's say if we take coupling factor to be infinite, G tends to infinity. So basically the electron system can transfer the heat to lattice system at infinite rate. So basically it means they're both in equilibrium always. If both are equilibrium, it becomes simply a diffusion equation. And we could see if g tends to infinity, this term would go to 0 because g is infinity, and this term would approach also 0. So essentially we are left with then gradient square of TL equal to total heat capacity CL plus C, we writing C, then K dTL by dt. So this is a standard diffusion equation we are familiar with. So basically, if electron and phonon system, like they are exchanging heat at an infinite rate, we recover back our original equation of lattice. So instead of writing it in this form, what we could also do, like from this equation, like we could determine the TL. So we could write now TL equal to, if we just rearrange the terms, so it would become T minus K over G gradient square of TE plus CE over G del T over del T. So now we could substitute this TL back into our this equation. We could substitute here and we could substitute here. So then we would get equation in terms of a electron temperature. So instead of getting it in a equation in terms of a lattice temperature, so here we got in terms of lattice temperature, we would get the same equation in terms of electron temperature. Again, the same thing applies here. Like if we put infinite rate of heat transfer between phonon and electron system, so G is infinity, so this term would go to zero, this term would go to zero. So now again we recover back our diffusion equation, which we are used to. Like, so basically, by combining this two-step model, like through this coupling term, we have been able to sort out, okay, like electron system would change in temperature differently than the lattice system, but we could approach our diffusion model again if we assume infinite rate of heat transfer. Okay, so then we could also look at this model of phonon scattering. So basically, in the microscopic two-step model, so this is equal to gradient square TL plus CL over G T by dt. Which we just wrote it in previous slide. I'm just rewriting it again. So the phonon scattering model, like we could also write, we are not going to drive the phonon scattering model, which we did in this case. So phonon scattering model, I'm going to write it directly. So phonon scattering model is grad square T plus 9 tau n. I would explain these terms, what these terms are actually. It's very similar to this model, like so in this, if you look at, we have introduced two constants, TR and TN. So what these two constants are so one is called relaxation time of Umklapp processes, and this tau n is relaxation time for normal processes. So now what is Umklapp process and what is normal process? So let's look at it. So let's say phonon is one of the phonon is traveling here. Another phonon is traveling here. So they both, once they're traveling, so let's call their energy as omega and omega 1, momentum as k1. And in this case, let's call it omega 2 and k2. So once they hit each other or they collide with each other, so they could give rise to a third phonon, which is of energy omega 3 and k3. So of course, in this scattering event, the energy and momentum has to be conserved. So if you conserve energy and momentum, so h bar omega is energy. So omega is the frequency. So h bar omega, so h bar omega 3 equal to h bar omega 1 plus h bar omega 2. That's the energy conservation. And the momentum conservation is simply k3. So k is a wave vector transfer, or you could write it as a momentum conservation. Think of it as momentum conservation, k2 plus k1. So h bar would cancel out. So basically what we are saying is omega 3 is equal to omega 1 plus omega 2 and k3 is equal to k2 plus k1. So if the scattering happens of this type, we call it normal processes, normal scattering. Okay, so now look at what is Unklapp scattering now. So what happens in the Unklapp scattering? So again we have a phonon 1, phonon 2. So they give rise to this same phonon 3. So omega 1 k1 energy and momentum, omega 2 k2, omega 3 k3. But what happens is some part of the momentum is transferred to the lattice. So effectively, like, so this momentum, like G, like this G is not the same as the coupling factor we are talking about. This is a lattice, reciprocal lattice vector. So we won't go in detail what this means is, but think of it as the some part of the momentum has been transferred to the lattice. So the now the particle is going to go in back direction. So the particle now eventually would this since the momentum has been transferred back, so this third particle now would omega 3 k3, but now the k3 plus g equal to k1 plus k2 and omega 1 omega 3 is equal to omega 1 plus omega 2. So now the momentum equation has been slightly modified, and what it does is the heat was propagating in the forward direction. In this case, in the normal process, the heat was still propagating in the forward direction, but what happened, because of the back scattering, because of the transfer of momentum to the lattice, now there is a resistive process. Basically the particle could also go back. So this gives rise to this resistivity or a finite conductivity in a material, and these processes we called Umklapp processes. And the equation we wrote, let me write down the equation again. So grad square t plus 9 tau n by 5 d by dt gradient square of t equal to 3 by so basically now we have defined tau n, tau r. So basically if the scattering happens through this process, what is the mean lifetime? This is tau r. Tau n is when there is no reciprocal vector. C is the speed of sound in this equation. So this is a phonon scattering model, like through which it's a very similar model. Like if you rearrange the coefficient from compare with the previous equation, you could retrace the coefficients. Okay, so there is another model which is like very similar to the microscopic two-step model. So let me write it down again. So microscopic two-step model was so we could write in a similar fashion this dual phase lag model. This is a very popular model which people use in people use it in non-Fourier heat transfer. So somebody who is studying a bulk thermal transport, they would try to use this model, like defining these phase lags. The dual phase model is very similar. Like we define just one common temperature, and of course there is a this tau t. There are two phase lags. We are including temperature phase lag, which is given by tau t, del by del t, gradient square of t plus 1 over k. I would define what this term is, tau q del q by del t So we are not going in the derivation again and again because these are very similar equations. Plus tau q by alpha del 2t by del t. Okay, so there are two phase lags we have defined. One is the temperature phase lag. And one is the flux phase lag. Okay, so by defining these, if you compare this equation, like this parameter can be mapped, so you could redefine the constant and you would get the exactly the same type of equation. So one thing which has been introduced here is this extra heat source. So this was an internal heat source, like the how the heat was generated. But we have introduced one extra heat source term, this tau q. So let me mark it with this tau q dq by dt. So this phase comes from the like phase lag of the heat flux vector. So the heat flux vector has some kind of a phase lag, and because of that, there is an extra source term we have to include in our equation. This tau q by k, so it becomes tau q by k dq by dt, and this was our real heat source within the which is applied to the system case. So both equations are pretty similar. Now there are like dual phase model, people attach it to the like significance to this temperature phase lag and the flux phase lag. So we would come to this flux lag part in a bit, like what this is. So maybe we would talk about it next, what the flux lag is. Okay. So the model we know, like the q equal to minus k gradient, gradient of temperature. So if there is a phase lag, like we could expand, like if there is a delay in phase, we could extend this part. Again, the equation would become q plus some tau dq by dt equal to minus k gradient of t. So now there is a the phase lag in the, this is the tau q part, like so in the phase lag in the q part. So basically what we are doing here, we are accounting for, so here we are accounting for increase of heat flux vector due to phonon collision in some time duration tau. So basically within some mean free time tau, like because of the collision, the flux would be changed. So that's what we are accounting for in this equation. And if there is no relaxation time, you could think if there is this tau is 0, we recover back our original like equation. What it also means is like if relaxation time is 0, so either if this tau is 0, so then either L is 0, so we could think of it as tau is L over V. So either the mean free length is 0, zero mean free path, like particle doesn't travel, or it's traveling with infinite velocity, which happens in this Fourier law, which we were explaining. Like the information is propagated at a very high time. So basically the collisions happen like the or an infinite in speed during between the phonon collisions. So we would recover back in either of these cases, we could recover back our original diffusion equation. But if we account for this heat flux vector, like increase in heat flux vector due to this phonon collision, like we get this part. And of course, then we have this energy equation with us. which is just simply given by this term. So if you combine this, both of these, like if you substitute this q part into this equation, then you would get this gradient square of t equal to 1 over alpha dt over dt plus 1 over c square del 2 t over del 2 t. So here we have defined alpha is equal to k by cp, and the c is alpha by tau. So what we have done here, like by writing it in this form, the relaxation form. So if you could recognize this term, this is a very similar to a wave equation, like where we have both spatial and temperature gradient in with respect to like del 2x by del 2 t by del x2 and del 2 t by del t2. Like this is like a wave equation form. So what it is depicting is a temperature disturbance. So temperature disturbance propagating as a wave. So by treating it as a like time delay in the like basically introducing this tau, we have come up with a model of temperature disturbance propagating as a wave with this diffusivity would act as a damping factor. So if you look at this equation, like if you go back to your mathematic notes, like this equation is actually a hyperbolic in nature. And sometimes people in literature also refer it to as a hyperbolic theory of in heat conduction or non-Fourier heat transfer. So when people use this equation, they might refer it to as a hyperbolic theory in the non-Fourier effect in heat conduction. So now coming to this C factor, the C is a like related to thermal wave speed. So we define it as a thermal wave speed. So what it's telling us, like if we take a isotropic medium, then cx square plus cy square plus cg square equal to, like all of them would be equal. So that would become 3c square. That would be equal to speed of sound square. So basically the thermal wave speed is this 1 over square root 3 of speed of sound. So basically the thermal wave would travel at roughly 57 point. So if you look at, so thermal wave speed is about 57.7% of speed of sound. We could also think like this term as a time delay in a heat flux vector. So right now we looked at increase in the heat flux vector due to the collision in some time t. We could also think of the same thing in a little bit differently. So let's look at it. So let's say we wrote this factor q equal to minus k gradient of t. So let's say this gradient was at some position r at time t. So the flux change would not happen instantaneously. So flux change at position r would happen at t plus tau time. So the flux would be little bit phase lagged compared to the temperature gradient. So in the Fourier's law, we just assume q equal to minus k dt by dx, so which means like they both are at the same time where the gradient is, flux is also defined at the same time. So now what we are doing is instead of defining both at the same time, we are saying gradient at position r and t, flux would be defined at time position r, but at some time delay t plus tau. So basically it's a time delay between the heat flux vector. So the tau basically is denoting here the time delay between heat flux vector and temperature gradient. And this happens because there is a finite time required for phonon collision, also the heat transport in the material volume. So the effective heat current starts to flow across the material at a some little bit later time, like T plus tau. So the flow, the heat flow would only start in that volume at some later time corresponding to the, because it takes finite time for the phonon collision to happen within that volume. So what we could write now, we could do some expansion of this factor. So we could write this Q of R. So this could be given by Q of R of T plus tau times dq by dt. So we have just done expansion of this factor, the left hand side, and this is equal to almost the k times the gradient of T, R of T, and this is true for when tau is much less than time T. So basically this is a first order Taylor's expansion. So if we apply this first order Taylor's expansion, we could get this equation, and you could see this is the same as what we had written in previous slide, and then you could get the same thermal wave model, like the thermal wave equation, where the thermal wave speed is 57.7% of the speed of sound. Okay, so now let's look at the models, like how do they behave. So let's plot some of these equations. So first let's write down the equation on the right hand side. So this is our diffusion equation in one dimension, or the Fourier law. It comes from the Fourier law. And the thermal wave equation we just came up with is del 2t by del 2 plus del t by del t equal to alpha del 2t by del x square. So this is our thermal wave equation, which we just went over. So now let's look at both of these models, like what happens. Like if we are looking at how the heat is being transported. So what we are looking at, so the length of the body is like, so let's say the two ends are maintained at certain temperature, T0 and T1. So two ends are maintained at certain temperature. So let's take some normalized variable theta equal to T minus T0, T1 minus T0, and this length is L, which we are taking roughly equal to 100 nanometer. We could define another non-dimensional constant, which is x over L. And then we could define also time as a non-dimensional constant, beta equal to time divided by this L over V. Okay. So let's plot these parameters now. So we are looking at some delta, like delta distance away, like from here, when the heat is propagating, and we are plotting this theta. So of course it would start from 1 because we have normalized it, and delta would be also from 0 to 1. So if we look at the small time, like basically let's take beta. So if we take, let's say, beta value of 0.1. So if we look at the diffusion equation, so if we look at this diffusion equation, that diffusion equation, as we said, like the heat transfer happens at an infinite speed. So even at a small time scale, the diffusion equation would give you something like this. So there would be, it's not going to be linear exactly, but there would be some curvature to it. That would be the diffusion equation. But if you look at this wave equation, which we have defined here, if you solve using that, you would find after some time it only has changed up to this point, and after that it has not actually changed, and the temperature is like the same as it was before. Only the some part, like one of the temperature, only small part has only changed in some small amount of a time. So what we are looking at here is basically wave front, thermal wave front, how it is going to propagate. So in the Fourier equation, like basically this diffusion equation, the wave front is not there. So basically the entire thing, the information got propagated very quickly. But in this case, we could look, this wave front is going to propagate. So this is for beta equal to 0.1. So we could look at the curve also now for same curve equal to beta equal to 1 also, like after some delay time. So now this thermal wave front might have propagated a little bit more. So what we would find is a thermal wave front maybe has come to this point, and then it becomes again some part it still doesn't know, like the temperature has been changed. But if we look back our diffusion equation is at this point would pretty much have become linear. At small time scale, it may not have been linear, but here it is fairly becoming close to linear part. Okay, this is after at some delay time. So let's proceed further in delay. So let's look at this delta. And we are looking at theta, again 0 to 1. So if we look at the steady state condition, so basically beta tends to infinity or like a steady state condition. So the thermal wave front has actually, it would equilibrate. So this is the thermal wave front, and exactly the diffusion equation would exactly overlap with that. Eventually in the steady state, they would exactly overlap. And as we have said, like this wave front would only develop after a, this wave front would can only develop after a like after we take this thermal wave equation, and this wave front eventually would merge, the solution in a long time would merge with the diffusion equation. So we would be only left with this type of a model. So is this wave front part clear, like how the heat is going to be propagated through this wave equation? So we are not going to use this wave equation beyond this point, but this illustrates this concept quite well. Like the heat propagation is actually happens at a finite speed, and that we found it to be 57.7% of speed of sound in case it's a isotropic material. So any questions at this point?
No, sir, it is more or less clear. Means we can have some correlation between wave equation, means as you told, thermal uh, heat transfer uh, or wave front, thermal front. You are talking about thermal front, no, sir?
Right.
So it is we having like wave equation.
Yeah, from the wave equation, like we could see this wave front, like which is this wave front,
Thermal
is
wave front.
traveling at a finite speed. Like it hasn't become
Yeah, yeah.
infinite.
So at this time we are able to differentiate between that Fourier's law. So it
Right,
is overlapping in a steady state condition only, diffusion
right,
equation.
right.
Okay.
Okay. So
So this,
let me give another case, like so which we would discuss in the I think next Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So not only these two models, like we could take again we could plot the same quantity theta and delta from 0 to 1 and 0 to 1, and we could take it at small value of beta equal to 0.1. So if it's a thin film, what would happen is like Fourier's law, like at small time would have like little bit of a curvature. It would be like that. Thermal wave equation would give you some kind of a wave front. But the actual data, if we would look at, like temperature would not equilibrate if it's a thin film like immediately. So what would happen in this case is like the equation we would solve, the Boltzmann equation we would solve later on, like there would be some part of it reaching here and then like staying constant. So if we go to the longer time scales, so basically if we go to, let's say, beta equal to 1, again we are looking at theta versus delta. So thermal wavefront, as we were showing, like it has reached a little bit higher. Fourier solution has become pretty much linear. But the solution we would do, like actually the what reality would be, is more like it would reach somewhere here. It would be more like, so even in the steady state, when we take now beta tends to infinity. So the thermal equation and both of these equations would merge with each other. The diffusion equation. But the Boltzmann transport equation or the radiative transfer, like what would happen, it won't merge exactly. Like there would be, it would be a linear, but it cannot, because it's a small thin film, it cannot equilibrate with the boundary temperature completely, and there would be some difference here, some temperature drop immediately with the isothermal boundary conditions we have applied. So this is for a case where it is a thin film, like, so let's say of the 100 nanometer or so, all these figures. So if we take a thick film, so let's say the film is really, really thick. So let's say more like 100 micrometer or so. So what would happen in that case is, like if we look at the delta theta 110. So diffusion equation, thermal wave, thermal wave equation, diffusion equation, they both overlap. But this radiative transport, like which we would do, like for thick films, that would also exactly overlap with that. So all three solutions would merge all together. So this is for a thick films. At short time scales, of course, there would be some difference. So we are plotting a steady state. At short time scales, like of course, there would be thermal front development, like it would slowly propagate. But in the steady state, all three solutions would overlap. But if we go back to the case of like thin films, then the solution of Boltzmann transport equation exactly won't overlap with the boundary condition, like isothermal boundary. There would be some drop, some type of a drop, which we would see in our solution, and we would drive it. Like actually, this we would do in the next Sunday, where you would overplot these results of the Boltzmann transport equation, and we would overplot with the Fourier's law, like diffusion equation. You would see they would differ quite a bit. So we would solve it in time as well. Okay. So there is another topic I want to start today, and I think that would be our last topic for today. So that would deal with this Mathiassen's rule. So what Mathiassen's rules tell us, like if you remember, we took some scattering events, right? So where one phonon is intersecting with one, giving rise to third phonon. This was the normal scattering processes. And then there was Umklapp processes. So where the two phonons go, but the momentum is also transferred to the crystal. And what could also happen, so there are two different scattering processes, so they would have different lifetime also, like mean free time would be different. Like maybe this would happen, let's say after 1 picosecond, and maybe this would happen after maybe 2 picosecond. So these are just some hypothetical numbers. So there could be different mean free time for both of them. And what could also happen, because sample has a finite size, so phonon could intersect with the boundary also. So there would be a boundary scattering time also. So this we call tau r, this is tau n. So after how long does it would hit the boundary? So there could be different lifetime. So of course, when we are doing simulations, like it's very hard to treat all of them independently, especially in the thermal wave model. So we have to come up with a single tau. So single tau, how we reach is like it's given as a combination of this Matheson rule. So which is given by 1 over tau equal to 1 over tau r plus 1 over tau b plus 1 over tau n. So tau n is this normal processes, boundary processes, and the relaxation processes. So we inversely add them together and give rise to 1 over total tau. So let's say we take one example here. Let's say we take example of, let's say, silicon. Silicon has like this 10 micrometer of a thickness. So in this process, like, and of course there could be, we did not add, but there could be impurity scattering also. So let's say not scattering with another phonon, but there could be some impurity in the sample. So something like that. So Umklapp and so 1 over tau r typically is of the order of, let's say in silicon for this size would be somewhere 1.8 10 per 13 to 6.1 10 per 13 radian per second. So if this is the frequency range we are taking, which is a typical phonon frequency, you could convert it to terahertz or MeV, so radian per second. So in this range, this 1 over tau r would be more dominant processes. So this is a phonon frequency. So every time, if you remember, we were writing this omega versus k for dispersion relation. So this is the omega value in radian per second. So within this range, this Umklapp or impurity scattering would dominate, and the boundary scattering, like so the boundary scattering is 1 over tau b. It would be much smaller. If it's a really small thickness sample, then the boundary scattering would start to dominate, and it would be a little bit different than the original. Okay, so now I think we would move to the slides a little bit, and let's see. So we have covered all of this part. So that's what I was describing right now. This Matheson rule, like it's a combination of several scattering processes in certain range. Like some process would dominate over another one. So let's look at the plot. Like because of this plot, we are coming back to the slides part. So this normal scattering lifetime, like we could give it by this expression. So people have derived it, like found some expressions. They don't have a very rigorous definition, but they seems to work quite well. Some phenomenological models like tau r, we could define like that. So if we look at tau n, we are looking at in seconds. So basically 10 to power minus 10 would be point, like basically 0.1 nanosecond. So here we are looking at tau r, here we are looking at frequency. So first we'll only look at this curve. So as the frequency increases, you could see that tau n actually starts to decrease. So basically the frequency mean, so as the frequency, so we were looking at this omega versus k curve. So as we are going up in this frequency range, like as we are going up in this range, the normal scattering process like actually start to decrease. So we are just plotting this equation. Okay, so this normal scattering processes also decrease with respect to normal, like tau becomes smaller and smaller with the temperature as well. So what we mean is, like as we increase the temperature, like if phonon was scattering previously in let's say 0.2 nanoseconds, which is this part, it would scatter maybe now in 0.1 nanosecond at high temperature. So if it was a tau n was 0.2, so if two phonon collisions were happening after 0.2 nanoseconds, now they are going to happen after 0.1 nanosecond. So it is decreasing with temperature, because now the atoms, phonons could move, like they could collide, all of them are excited, so they could collide with each other much more quickly. Same thing, if we increase the frequency, the lifetime becomes smaller and smaller. So this is the entire 3D curve. If we plot omega and t together, and you could see like how this curve looks like. The similar shape we get for the tau r as well. Like as we increase the omega, it decreases. Zumklapp processes increase the temperature. This also decreases, and the overall shape is like that. So in the silicon, you could look at the magnitude here. Like this is about 4 times larger than the. So the Zumklapp processes are roughly 4 times larger than the normal processes in the system. Is this slide clear, or should I spend more time in it? We are talking about lifetimes, like this, what is the mean lifetime with respect to frequency and temperature, because phonon frequency of like they are of course there is a wide range of phonon frequencies, and if we change the temperature, how does that mean lifetime would change? And if we have to combine all of them, so as we described, we could take this Mathiasson rule in purity boundary, we could all add them together. Okay, so now coming to this size effect part, like what is this size effect? So we haven't still talked about this thermal conductivity much. So we are assuming this thermal conductivity. So basically Q equal to minus K dt by dx. We are assuming this K to be constant pretty much. But actually this thermal conductivity overall also depends on the temperature. So if we look at with the temperature and we look at thermal conductivity, it actually goes up and then slowly starts to come down. For most material, this would be a typical behavior of a thermal conductivity where one of the peaks would happen. So in the different region of this thermal conductivity, so let me talk a little bit more in detail here. So we are plotting with respect to temperature, we are talking about thermal conductivity. So in general, this thermal conductivity would look like this, like for a typical material. So it's a combination of several scattering processes. Like here we could talk about two processes.
Sir, I have one query.
Yes.
So so far we have discussed about phonons, atoms, electron,
Right.
and the behavior or the manner they move. So is there any effect of that movement on thermal conductivity of any material?
Right. Actually, thermal conductivity is entirely determined by those movements. So thermal conductivity in a very kinetic, if we use kinetic theory of gases, it comes out to be 1/3 heat capacity, group velocity square, and tau. That's how the thermal conductivity is given if we use the kinetic theory of gases. So C is the heat capacity. If you remember Vg, like Vg is just we did example today also. This is a slope of this line, like which we determined today. Like that's what we were talking about. Tau is the lifetime, like how frequent those collisions happen between the phonons. So this thermal conductivity is directly related to how this dispersion curve actually looks like and how the scattering happens. And through this dispersion curves also, the heat capacity is also determined by this omega versus k curve, because these are the phonons. They are going to like absorb this heat. Like if you raise the like how much heat is absorbed by raising the temperature, like to raise the temperature by 1 degree, so that heat is going to be absorbed by these phonons. Like, so the heat capacity also depends on the phonons. So phonons are the really critical part, how atoms move, what is their omega with respect to k, like that entirely governs the thermal conductivity in materials. Is it clear, Yogesh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, may I leave now? Sir, I have some work to do. I
Yeah,
think
sure. I
time
think
will.
we would stop in 5 minutes or so, I think.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so this is pretty much made of uh, three parts, like three parts. Like in the high temperature regime, like here, actually the Unclap process is dominate, which we just talked about. And in the low temperature regions, so here the boundary and impurity sex scattering dominates. So this shape comes if there was only boundary and impurity scattering, like this shape would be like, it would become constant. So let me draw again on different slide. So let's say if there was only boundary scattering, so it would be more like looking like this thermal conductivity with the temperature. So if there was just unclap scattering, so thermal conductivity would really shoot up very high value, and it would go down something like this. So this is only when boundary scattering was there, the red curve. This is when only unclap scattering is there. And if we combine both of them together, like we get something like this kind of a curve, like which is a in real materials. That's how the thermal conductivity looks like. So basically, the point we want to say, the thermal conductivity actually also depends on the boundary, like because after like if the boundary is really small, the phonons would scatter quite rapidly. If it's far away, they would scatter less. So the thermal conductivity is proportional to actually the size effect, and that's what we wanted to convey through this slide. So this thermal conductivity is proportional to mean free path, how far like material like the atoms could travel before scattering. So the K bulk and K thin film is proportional to mean free path of thin film, like the length and the LB. So it's the ratio of mean free path ratio of the two. And mean free path of the thin film, we could estimate exactly from the like Mathiassen's rules, like we could apply for the thin film. 1 over LF is equal to mean free path of the bulk and 1 over pi d. So d is the thickness and pi is here is just some constant factor which depends on the sample geometry and other factor. So in general, you could write it LB by LF equal to 1 over this pi LB over d, and then KF by KB you could write it if you substitute this thing into back into this equation. So you could write KF by KB equal to 1 over 1 plus pi LB by d. Beta you could assume d over LB, so it would come out in this form. If d is much larger than LB or beta is much greater than 1, we could just write KF by KB equal to 1 minus in this form. And you could see if it's much larger, it is essentially 1. If it's a ratio, some ratio we are getting, if it's not as large, then we would have some correction terms to the thermal conductivity. So the point I want to drive home here is the thermal conductivity actually depends on the size, like what is the size of the film, like thin film we are doing or like a bulk material. Okay. So how to determine now this function pi? Like, so this pi depends actually on the geometry. So if we have thin wires, like, which is of course these cylindrical things, thin wires. So thin wires divided by bulk value, like it is given by this factor. These are all expression like derived from phenomenological modeling. So the pi would become 4 by 3, 1 minus p, just rearranging the terms. And we are still not considering this specular reflection and diffuse reflection. I would explain later on what it means. And if we take thin films, then it's a roughly this factor. So there are different models you could talk about, like, but essentially the point is like as you decrease the size, the thermal conductivity would also decrease. Okay, so the one last thing now we want to actually talk about is this specular reflection and diffuse reflection. So let's say this is our boundary and one of the phonon is traveling. It hits this boundary. So the specular reflection would be it hits the boundary, whatever the normal is, like let's say it came at angle some theta. It would go exactly out at the same theta. So that is a specular reflection. And let's say there is another case like where now this phonon is approaching some boundary at some angle theta, but after scattering, it could go in any random direction. Like it depends how the scattering is happening. Like it could go in all possible such direction. So if it scatters like this, we call it diffuse scattering, diffuse reflection, sorry. And this is our specular reflection. So specular reflection doesn't contribute like to the resistance because phonon is like it's not creating any resistance in the system. But diffuse reflection would create some kind of resistance, and the thermal conductivity would again become less. And because of the exactly same regions, that's why they had defined this specular reflection parameter. So if it's a diffuse, then the P is 0. If it's a specular, it is a 1. And if it's a specular, then you could think of this P is 1, then pi becomes infinite. So basically the thin wires, no matter how thin wire is, like thermal conductivity would remain exactly same if everything is specular reflection. But if it's not a specular reflection, then there is some resistance in the system, and then the thermal conductivity would reduce. So I think we would stop at this point. And tomorrow we would continue with more of this size effect and see and then progress from there. So tomorrow's class is from 10 to 1, so 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And tomorrow it's a hands-on. So in the beginning we would cover this size effect, and then we would start coding. So what I would do is I would explain what the problem is and how you should approach it, and then maybe you should practice. If there is any problem in coding, then we could discuss. But please be prepared with either Python code or like MATLAB. Please come prepared with that, because we would do this hands-on training, which is a part of this course. And I would upload these slides, and the lecture, basically the reference material is already on the link I sent yesterday. Okay, if you do not have any questions, we would stop here.